The 2017 Deloitte Millennial Survey studied 8,000 millennials across 30 countries, 300 of which came from Australia. They found that Australian millennials are less optimistic about the future, with only 8% of respondents believing that they'll be better off than their parents financially, and only 4% believing that they'll be happier. It's not hard to see why. With almost one third of Australian young people being unemployed or underemployed, the highest it's been in 40 years, housing being as unaffordable as ever, and university graduates having to pay back more of their student loans sooner, young people aren't in a very good place right now. Christine De Leon, social science student here in Sydney, doesn't see much potential in her homeland and is starting to look elsewhere to settle.
I think I've always preferred to live in another country. I think, for one, the living expenses just insane. Like, I have friends currently buying houses because they're planning to get married, and it's just ridiculous. It's just kind of scary thinking that I won't be able to afford to live anywhere. And job-wise, I'm not confident I will find something in my profession, which is a bit like shaky as well. So yeah, I mean, like, I'm going overseas next year for international studies, and I think that's me testing the waters of wanting to live in another country.
I spoke with Ken Dovey, the director of the Master of Business and Technology program at UTS. He agrees that the future of Australia isn't looking so bright for millennials, but he says that other alternatives aren't so reassuring either.
I don't see a great future ahead. There are all sorts of issues that worry me. I think the global tensions at the moment, there are all sorts of global tensions which, again, make it difficult because where do you go to? And I think for many millennials I talk to, whilst they're afraid of the future, I think they're probably more afraid of moving to another place because they really don't know where to go to escape the threats that we see at the moment.
Why are all these things happening to millennials? Tamsin Pitch says that millennials find themselves in an unusual point in history. The co-director for the Australian Centre for Public History says that the cohort is facing a unique set of circumstances.
The generation we know as millennials is facing a kind of conjunction of geopolitical changes that manifest in local contexts that are reshaping the future of work, the way politics works, and the way money works. And we see that manifesting in terms of the housing affordability issue, but I think we also see it in the advance of neoliberalism and the erosion of social democratic institutions like healthcare and education that have come with that. And then there's also the digital revolution and more importantly, maybe automation and robotisation. So I think those three shifts are happening simultaneously, and those three waves are crashing in upon the millennial generation in a big way.
Millennials, however, aren't the only victims of the ever-changing society. In a conversation with Elizabeth Humphreys, a political economist based at UTS, she says that when we take a big picture perspective, millennials are facing problems just like every other age group and demographic in society. They're not the only ones struggling.
We can perhaps see age as another stratifier alongside issues of, say, race, class, and gender, sexuality. So yes, millennials, because of the cost of living in Sydney or Australia more generally at the moment, have an added pressure because of their age. But we could equally say people who are in that retired bracket as well, if they've not been able to generate wealth in their lifetime. So we get really, really poor old people as well, really struggling, trying to fight it out in the rental market because they've not had the sort of job that's earned an income over a lifetime in order to buy a property.
So, what now? With what seems to be a lack of promise and hope in the future of Australia, what are millennials supposed to do? Vote, as Tamsin Pitch says in the conversation I had with her. Exercise your right to make a difference and give power to the people who will give you a better future. Elizabeth Humphreys echoes this and encourages young people to come together and use their collective strength to fight for a better future.